Hi artists. Today we're going to do a project that is inspired by some things I've seen out on Facebook where kids have gone out and used painter's tape on the sidewalks or on fences, and they've taped out a space and they've done chalk, filling it up and making it look kind of like stained glass. And I think that's a lot of fun, and I think you guys should definitely do that when it's nice out and you can take the sidewalk chalk out and get outside. Just make sure you're staying distant from your friends, that kind of stuff. But on the days that we have rain, which those are coming up, you might want to do something kind of similar inside. So I've done a few examples here and I'm going to show you how I got to them. The first one is one that I did with crayon. So I used something similar to what you guys would do outside. I use different kinds of tape. I've been trying to figure out which one is going to be the best for this project. I tried the washi tape on this paper and you can see it really peeled up in a lot of places. It's a little bit too sticky for the copy paper. In fact, some of it is still stuck there. So the washi tape, as much as I love it because it's really cool and fun and gives me a really clear idea of where the tape is, that one wasn't so good. This one I used watercolor and I used a masking tape that looks like this. It doesn't really measure things out. I don't know how accurate it is, but that one also kind of peeled up a little bit. This paper is not copy paper. This is the multimedia paper. And it lost a little bit of its texture with the tape, but not quite as much as the washi tape. I did it again on copy paper, and this time I used the masking tape on the copy paper. That worked pretty well. I didn't lose too much of the texture of the paper. This is with crayon. And then I did it once on some black cardstock and I used a tempera paint on it. I did lose a little bit of the paper surface, but not too much. I could kind of trim that away and make it look kind of neat. But today we're going to do a project, and I've got two actually set up. One in white that I'm going to do with you guys. I've already set up the tape on that one. And then one in black, and I'm going to show you how I'm setting it up. So if you have a plastic placemat underneath your paper, that would work pretty well. This isn't a plastic placemat, but it's what I have in place of that. So your parents might need to help you a little bit with the tape, but I'm going to lay my tape out, and as I do, I want to make sure that it's always down really nice and tight to my paper. That means that when I tear the tape off later, I need to be really, really careful so that pulling the tape up doesn't tear the paper any more than absolutely necessary. So I put the tape down on all four sides, and that's going to give me that nice, clean, crisp border edge that you see going around here and around here. This one, you can see I wrote the word love. I put a little tape heart up at the top. Anywhere that you have tape, as long as you have sealed it down nice and smooth, it's going to resist. It is called a resist when you have something that resists the media that you're using to put down. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do a little bit of a design and a pattern here on the black. Parents, I'm going to be using some craft paint for this. You could use tempera paint, you could use craft paint, but if you're using paint, kids, you have to have a little bit heavier paper than the copy paper. So this is good with markers, it's good with crayons, it's good with paint. Obviously, it's good with chalk if you have tried it outside with the sidewalk chalk. But as I go through and kind of come up with my pattern with the tape, and I'm not doing anything in particular except for making sure that my lines are pretty smooth, I'm just going to lay it down. Another thing that you can do with your tape, on that love one, I did not use the straight edge. I actually took my tape And I'll do a little bit here in this one just for fun. But you can take the tape and you can tear the tape in half, sort of, and it gives you kind of a rough edge. So if you have that rough edge, it makes it so that the resist is also in sort of a rough edge. So I'm going to lay this down like that, and that's going to change that edge of this piece of tape. All right, so this one is already laid out, okay, with the white paper. For that one, I am going to use crayons. You could use Crayola markers. You could use watercolor. Copy paper will not take the watercolor very well. It'll bubble up a lot on you and that kind of stuff. We talk sometimes in art about making sure that you're always doing your best coloring. So not scritchy, scratchy, scribble, scrabble coloring. I don't want to color like this. That's going to be messy. I want to color pretty smooth and even. If I do get messy, I can always come back in over it. But as I'm coloring, I'm going to smooth it out as much as I possibly can, filling up my space, which is why it's kind of nice to get a lot of spaces in there. Big spaces definitely take a lot longer to fill in. You can see where my crayons are kind of overlapping. It kind of doubles up on the color. But as we go through and we fill it up, we can always color over where we've already colored to even out the texture, to even out the color. I'm going to go through and get all of this colored in. I know it's really exciting to watch somebody else color, isn't it? Well, we can be coloring together. You can get your setup and pause the video for a little bit, and then you can color right along with me. Just choosing any kind of pattern. It really doesn't matter what kind of pattern you do. It's just kind of a good idea to get lots of little spaces in there, spaces that you feel comfortable coloring. So as I go through, I'm getting my edges up here. I'm trying to color all the way up to the tape, which sometimes means I need to change the angle of my crayon. Okay, I want to get all the way up to the edge, and then I color over that edge again. So I kind of even that out. All right, and I do kind of have some scribble scrabble looking stuff going on. You can see I didn't stay in the same pattern as I was going along, so I'm going to come back in and I'm going to color over that with longer strokes that blend that scribble scrabbleness into the rest of it. Now, if you have a texture, you might see that underneath your paper, and there's not really anything you can do about the texture until you remove the paper. Then you can maybe try. You can also not worry about it, or you can make that be a part of your plan. Sometimes we'll do texture in the classroom and we'll put bubble wrap and we'll put shelf liner and we'll put different kinds of things underneath our paper. It's a little bit harder to tape things down if that's what you have done, but you can think about it that way if that helps you be okay with anything that you don't like. Again, I'm going to color right up next to my lines as best I can, trying to make sure, and these are those twistable crayons, which I do like for a lot of reasons. Like they don't melt in the car all over the place. That's how I used to have them when my boys were little. Because we would leave things in the car too long, and sometimes I would end up with a melted crayon in the back seat. That made me a little sad. So I want to go through and I'm coloring. Now I'm coloring the opposite direction from what I colored the first time. So I want to do the whole thing that way. Okay, so I'm coloring, getting all of that in. And I've really done what I can to get right up to my edges. Getting that nice and full of bright color. As you're working on these kinds of things, this is something that's kind of fun to think about, doing one that's all cool colors. That's what I did over on the first one. This one. Oh, no, I didn't. That's what I did in my watercolor one. So my watercolor one, I chose all cool colors. Those are the blues, purples, and greens. On this one, I did all kinds of colors. I did some hot colors, the oranges and the yellows and the reds, and then the cool colors too. So you can think about how you want to lay out your color plan. Do you want to do a whole color wheel, which would be at least your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple? If you wanted to, you could add in your tertiary colors. I'm trying to help you guys with some of those big words. If your parents don't know what tertiary means, tell them it means third. It's tertiary is kind of like thirdiary or secondary. Secondary are your orange and green and purple colors. Your primary colors are the very first ones. There's nothing that goes into them. You can't use other colors to make them. So red, yellow, and blue are your primary. But then tertiary is when you mix a secondary and a primary. So if I mix red with orange, I end up with red-orange, which is what this color is right here. So I am not going to color this whole entire thing right now with you guys because that's not any fun for you. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to move this one out of my way once I get this section colored. Move this one out of my way, and I'm going to use the craft paint on the black paper. Now, the black paper that I have is a cardstock. So it's a little bit heavier than the copy paper. Construction paper might be a little bit tricky with the tape depending on the kind of construction paper that you have. Now, when I'm painting at home, I usually have a little towel that I can wipe my brush off on. I have my water cup, and I'm going to talk with you guys. I'm going to just remind you how I like for you to paint in the classroom with me. Parents, if you're using a craft paint and you're not sure how much to put out and you're a little bit worried about putting out too much, I never put out more than maybe a nickel size worth of paint, and for this kind of stuff, a dime size is plenty. So if I squeeze out just a little tiny bit of the colors that I'm choosing to use, and you do have to mix up your craft paint, you have to shake it a good bit before you put it out. You can use an old lid. You can, like a plastic lid from the grocery store, from a yogurt container or something like that. It's a really good, easy way to reuse those items and to make sure that you're not making a mess of something that you want to hold on to. So those containers, your yogurt containers, those are good for water cups if you don't have something already. And then the lids are good for a little paint palette. Okay, that one that I just put out is actually a glitter paint. We do like it when things are glitterific in our classroom, so sometimes that's kind of a fun thing to do. Now kids, we always talk about when we rinse our brush, we wipe it once, twice, 3 times in the cup, and then once, twice, 3 times on the paper towel to make sure that it's clean. So I'm using a yucky old towel here to dry things off on. You might be using a paper towel, but if you don't dry it off inside the cup first, you soak that paper towel and it doesn't work very well for very long. So when I'm painting, I might see some of that black paper kind of show through. That's okay. It gives it kind of a cool texture, especially if I'm always painting in the same direction. I don't think I mixed up my blue paint very well. But if I'm always painting in the same direction, then I can see that pattern, which sometimes I want to see, sometimes I don't want to see. So the only thing I don't want to do is I don't want to push with my brush. If I push the paint with my brush, it starts bending the bristles back, and then my brush doesn't work very well later. I'm not taking good care of it. So I've got the blue section painted. I'm going to rinse, rinse, rinse. Wipe, wipe, wipe. And then dry, dry, dry. It's pretty clean. I might give it another little rinse just to make sure. Okay. If I get the paint on the brass part of the brush, I need to fold my towel over and wipe it to make sure that I get it off, because otherwise it'll mix in with another color. All right, this is a kind of a neon light green, it says. So it might look a little bit yellowish for now. We'll see what it dries to be. So I did one with tempera. This is the craft paint, just because my tempera paint that I have at home is really, really old and kind of gunky. So I found some craft paint instead to try. And again, with the light color, especially on this black, is really going to show. Now, I'm not painting in the same direction, as in sometimes I'm going down, sometimes I'm going up, but I'm not going to side to side. And even though my brush is going back and forth, I'm still not pushing with my brush. I'm still dragging it up. I'm dragging it down. So I'm going pretty quickly, but I'm not pushing with that brush. And I think I want that light green. I like that color, so I'm going to move that up here too. I'm going to have it in a couple of places just for fun. This time I'm going side to side, so we'll see what that looks like. I might wish later that I had painted all of my brush strokes in the exact same direction, or I might like it having two different ones. All right, so rinse, 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 wipe, 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 dry, dry, dry. It's ready for my next paint. Now, if I'm using watercolor, I can't dry it off that much. I'm gonna have to get it a little bit wet, but because this paint is wet, because it already is in a liquid form, I don't want to add water to the paint. If I add water, it's going to make it too transparent, and transparent paint on top of black paper is really not going to work very well. It might work okay on white paper, but it's not going to work very well on the black paper. All right, so I've got a little purple here. I'm going to do one section in red. And then I'm going to do one section with my glitterific paint. It's just craft paint, but it's got glitter in the paint. And parents, for a lot of our kids, that is just really the best thing ever. So, you decide. It's also kind of nice because if you're using the glitterific paint, then you don't have to get the glitter out, because when you get the glitter out, the glitter never, ever, 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 ever goes away. It stays forever in all that we do. And while some of us are fine with that, some of us are not. All right, rinse, rinse, rinse. Wipe, wipe, wipe. Dry, dry, dry. It's good. So now I'm going to go to my glitterific paint. And this paint is going to look like it's kind of clear. It's not clear. Well, the paint is kind of clear, but it's got all that glitter in it, and it's got kind of a green. This particular one is a green aqua turquoise glitter. They have all different kinds of colors of glitter paint. So you can decide what you want to do. And, you know, all of these supplies, nothing has to be done with any one supply. There's not anything that I'm going to do with you guys that you can only use what I'm using. Kind of use whatever you have on hand. And then when you have to make an essentials run while we're doing our whole quarantine stay at home as much as we possibly can kind of idea, then when you have to go out and get something, or if you're ordering stuff online to be sent to your home, then you can order it at that time. These craft paints really are pretty inexpensive. I think a lot of times you can get them for about 50 cents a piece. Sometimes it's $1 a piece, depends on the brand and where you're getting them. But they're not too bad. The crayon one. All right, so now I'm going to take this one because this has to dry. I cannot peel the tape up on this until the paint has had a chance to really get pretty dry. I want to let it dry as much as possible. This one, even though I did not finish coloring it, maybe I'll do one more little section here. Even though I haven't fully finished coloring it, I'm going to take the tape up. When you take the tape up, you really do have to be very, very careful. So even if you're good at putting the tape down, you might want to ask a parent to help you, but guess what? If it tears with your parent, don't be upset with them. It's not their fault. Sometimes the tape is just super sticky, and when it's really super sticky, it just wants to take some of that paper with it. So, as you're working, remember, there's nothing that can't be either redone, especially right now when we've got so much time to work on things, so we can always work on perfecting something. If we don't get it right the first time, and just keep trying. You guys have seen my Pablo Picasso quote in my classroom of, I am always doing that which I cannot do in order that I might learn how to do it. And I do think that that is really just one of the best things to always remember, that there is nothing that anyone does that they were just born knowing how to do perfectly. Okay, we all have to practice something a little bit at some point. So, peeling the tape up. I got to think about which one did I put down last. I got to kind of look for that top, and then very carefully, very slowly, I'm going to peel that paint away, or that tape away. Okay, so there's one. And I know I didn't get that other side, but super slow for the big reveal, right? There we go. The longer you leave the tape down, the more sticky it is. So you do have to kind of think about that. I would not let it sit overnight. I would peel the tape up within the day that I do it. Maybe within the hour, because even that craft paint will not take very long to dry. It'll take about 20 minutes maybe, sometimes 10. We might try a little bit of it. Okay, so I have two pieces here, so I'm going to be as careful as I can pulling that up. Okay, this one. Oh, you can hear it got some of the paper a little bit, not too bad. A little bit more, not too bad. Ah, there it goes. And you can see the white on my tape. You can see where it tore it a little bit. I'm going pretty slow and pretty careful. And it's still doing it, so don't get mad at your parents if there's a little bit of a tear. Because you can always use a piece of Scotch tape and tape it back down. I did try Scotch tape, and that, again, that still tore my paper a little bit. It seems, oops, see? There it happened. I got too fast. Started working too quickly. Super slow. Super careful. Okay, I can always take a little piece of Scotch tape and tape that down later if I'm worried about it. There we go. Last two. Ooh, that one tore a lot. Let's see. Maybe if I start from this end and go a little slower. So yeah, I got that corner there pretty good, didn't I? That's all right. Okay. And then finally, maybe we'll try a couple of these over here where I think it's a little bit drier. Because I wanted you guys to see where it's kind of scratchy edges. Let's see. See how that's not a perfectly smooth, clean edge? But that really kind of does work a little bit better with letters and that kind of stuff as opposed to these shapes. The shapes are a little trickier with that rough edge. It just looks like I made a mistake. It wasn't. It was planned, but it kind of looks like a mistake. So you decide what you're going to do. If you want to take pictures of it, I would love to see it. I loved seeing the ones that you guys put up the other day. So have fun with this, and I will do another one with you soon. Okay, bye.